Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Social Flight Live. I'm Jeff Simon. It is so wonderful to be back after a couple weeks off with you. Thank you so much for taking time out of your evening to join us here. And I want to make a special thank you to everyone that I bumped into or who came up to me when we were down at Sun and Fun. We had an absolute blast. It is so wonderful to meet all of you in person. And I'm looking forward to doing that again when we get to the biggest event, which we're also going to talk about tonight, of course, which is AirVenture. A couple of other quick things as we get started. First of all, there is lots of information and cool, fun videos out there from our experience down at Sun and Fun. I got to fly the Junkers A50 Junior, which is this wonderful LSA that just came out from the Waco company. Amazing. Got to visit with all of our partners that you see here on this board. It was really great, and we also have our Fly to Win challenge going on. Just go and log in to socialflight.com or get the free SocialFlight mobile app for Apple and Android devices. We've got tens of thousands of aviation events and destinations, so many great things, and we are always giving away prizes, and there's one you can go check out today there as well. So all you have to do is get that, go out there, fly. We're just here to support General Aviation. In addition to that, I'd like to let you all know, of course, we've got some great news out of Sun and Fun, and that is brought to you by Bose Aviation and the new A30 headset. If you have not had a chance to check this out, find a way to do it. It is so cool. An extremely light headset, just the evolution of what has become known as kind of the Cadillac headset of the industry of the A20. It's been quite a long time since they've had a new headset out, and I will tell you from experience, it's so light, very little clamping force. It's pretty cool, and you need to check it out. It is the Bose A30 headset. Now, on to tonight's guest. I am thrilled to have Jack Pelton here this evening and joining us. Jack Pelton is the CEO and chairman of the board of the Experimental Aviation Association, otherwise known as EAA. His leadership has transformed EAA's impact on all of aviation, from experimentals that represent the fastest growing aircraft segment to the largest aviation youth outreach program in the world. Jack is a lifelong, passionate aviation enthusiast who built his first airplane with his father as members of EAA Chapter 1 at Riverside, California. He holds an ATP and commercial pilot certificates with instrument multi-engine and seaplane ratings, plus type ratings in the Cessna Citation and Cessna Mustang jets. And that should not come as a surprise, as his previous role was as CEO of the Cessna Aircraft Company. Tonight, we're going to talk about AirVenture 2023 and all of the other amazing things happening at EAA. I'm going to bring Jack on the line right now. Please help me welcome to Social Flight Live, EAA CEO Jack Pelton. How are you?
Hey, Jeff, how are you?
Excellent. Hey, I really enjoyed getting the opportunity to chat with you and when we were down there, and Mark Patey at the same time down there at the show. Did you have fun down at Sun and Fun?
Yeah, it's always a good time. It's one of those, especially being up in Oshkosh where you have a true winter, to get down there and get refreshed and see the airport friend or aviation friends and community, and start thinking about July will be right around the corner, and it's time to ramp this thing up.
Exactly. I being from Boston, I wouldn't say I have winters as cold as you do, but it's enough that when April, the beginning, rolls around and it's worth, think about going down there, it's finally shake off the cold, get the first introduction to the flying season going down there, and then get ready for AirVenture, which is squarely in all of our sites right now. So I wanted to start, a lot of people have questions about it, but you've got a lot of cool news coming out, almost too much to list, of what is being celebrated in this 70th anniversary AirVenture. Can we talk about some of those?
Absolutely. I think, the most important kind of overarching theme for us this year is it's the 70th anniversary of EAA as an association, not just AirVenture or the event, but being founded originally in 1953, and through all of these years continuing to expand and grow our mission and our focus, from the early days when it was really about just home building to where now it's about advocacy and bringing young people into aviation and supporting all of general aviation, whether it be warbirds, the aerobatic community, vintage, you name it. We're deeply involved with it. And of course, what has been called our convention is the time for us to all get together once a year and celebrate all of those things. So very important milestone for us. And I think that the importance of it is throughout that history, there's been so many significant milestones that EA has really been a part of, and starting with actually getting the regulatory body to recognize and support experimental amateur built airplanes, and then moving through time, whether it be auto fuel STCs, whether you get the sport pilot net LSA category, and just so many other things that have happened, basic med along with AOPA, that have been positive influences to help grow this industry.
It's really amazing. I mean, you're right. We think of AirVenture as this large entity, but EAA itself and all the work that has been done by you and your predecessors to make changes there is really remarkable. I'd like to get to some of that because there's so many programs to understand. But let's start with some of the other cool things going on, because I had read recently that you're going to have, for example, the largest group of Corsairs approach. That's just one of the highlights coming.
Yeah, we last year was a major motion picture that came out that was about the book that was called Devotion, and it was a significantly historical film about Medal of Honor winner Tom Hudner and his gallant efforts to try to save who was the first black naval aviator, Jesse Brown, who had crashed it was during the Korean conflict, and Hubner went down to try to rescue him, and it was not successful, and it was something that was very tough on him. But it tells a lot of different stories, and the Corsair was highlighted in that film. And that film was it was another one of the ones like Top Gun Maverick where there was no CGI being used; it was actual real aircraft being flown. So we're going to have a gathering of Corsairs in honor of the movie Devotion, and we're hoping to have 13 or more Corsairs on the grounds. And I'm looking forward to the startup on the flight line with the wings up, and they all unfold them and they all go fly together. And it's what we always refer to as only an Oshkosh moment that for us enthusiasts will be very memorable, like a lot of the other memories over the last 70 years, including the landing of the Concorde and Spaceship One and other things. So it's going to be a big day.
I mean, even just that segment of focusing on the Corsair is so amazing. We had Kevin LaRosa II, K2. He was here on the show. He talked about the filming, the making of Devotion. For anyone who wants to, you can find that out on YouTube on SocialFlight. But it's fascinating how that all went together, and to celebrate that. And you mentioned something just now I hadn't even considered, that you're going to have them all like unfolding and showing how all this works. You rarely get to see a Corsair. You certainly don't get to see that very often.
No, you don't. And it's if you could just replicate the carrier deck, that's what we're looking at, is a Corsair sitting on top of the carrier deck, getting ready to take off for the mission for the day. And it's very special, especially when you have that many of them.
Wow, that's going to be amazing. Is someone going to paint a carrier deck? Because that would blow my mind.
In the filming, as K2 had mentioned, we had him out last year as kind of we were very fortunate. They gave us access to the trailers of the movie. It was before it was being released, hoping to build up an aviation enthusiast crowd to go see the movie. And they actually built a replica aircraft carrier deck that these airplanes were flown off of to make it feel as real as possible for the movie. And it was down in Georgia, and I kept telling my guys, if we could have only, after the movie's over, gone down there and brought that thing back and left it here so that we could have our own carrier deck in Oshkosh, it would make for a memorable show.
Oh my goodness, that would be amazing. Let's talk about FIRST for a minute, because that's one of the really amazing things. There are so many aspects to AirVenture, just like there's so many aspects to EAA as an organization. And one of them that comes to mind is what you just said. It's firsts. There are these unique moments as again, the same thing as you just said, these AirVenture moments of your history or Oshkosh moments. When, I mean, I remember the 50th, I believe it was, celebration of D-Day,
Mhm.
where I don't, all of a sudden, all the lights came on in the distance of all those aircraft coming in, and you got chills. Everyone did. And I can't imagine something like that ever happening again at that scale.
No, and that, one of the things we work really hard on is making sure that it's going to be memorable experiences for people, but also making sure that we have a diversity of aviation topics that would interest anybody that came. So if you came as a family or a group of friends, there would be something for you, whether it be in the warbird area, or whether it would be in the home built area or the vintage, or whether it would be with space. All our forums and workshops, our theater in the woods, and the interesting people we have that come and speak and tell the history and the story, so that you walk away, no matter what your basic interest may be, there'll be something that will attach to you that will be a memory for that year. I think of
Mm.
when we had the Apollo 13 astronauts there, um, which was not that long ago, and I got goosebumps when I realized all of them were EA members, and it's you kind of think about that. And you think, here we're all in the same group together. We're all members of the same association, and not that you're rubbing elbows with the Apollo astronauts on a regular basis, but you're part of that same family, and that's what makes this place so special.
I couldn't agree more. And one of the things that's also fascinating is with that common bond, often you'll find yourself in a hangar just walking through talking to vendors, or sitting there looking at a plane. You look next to you and you're next to someone stellar in some area, someone extremely well known, or one of the Blue Angels that just happens to be looking at the same thing you are, or an astronaut. It's this common denominator where it brings everybody down to the same level over this common love of aviation, which is that 1 week celebration.
It is, and it also permeates then through how people behave during the week. The cleanliness, the care for each other's safety and enjoyment, and how people respect each other for the week. I have also referred to it as, if we could create society and model it after how you would want people to behave and the civility of it, it would be what happens at AirVenture during the week. You could leave your cell phone in a charger next to one of the shower facilities and go back 10 hours later and it'll still be there.
Exactly. Or there'd be like messages everywhere of someone trying to find you.
Right, right.
So what are some of the other big celebrations? Because you mentioned diversity, and you do a great job of saying we're going to really focus on this thing in maybe military, but we're also going to focus this thing in something that's civilian, et cetera, as you move along. What are some of the other big things to look for at AirVenture 2023?
So some of the themes, the military piece will have a couple components to it, because we're going to have some focus on the Vietnam end of Vietnam conflict, with our honor flight that goes from here back to DC with Vietnam veterans who get to go see the Vietnam Veteran Memorial for the day, and then come back and get honored when they come home and come off that airplane, of which for that conflict none of those veterans ever were honored when they came back home. It was a pretty rough time returning to a conflict that people didn't understand. And for many of them, it's a very moving, long overdue. But that will come with Hueys in the sky and a lot of other really neat airplanes from that era that we'll be putting on display during the air show. We're going to talk about space. We have a program lined up where we're getting some of NASA. We hope to have some of the Artemis astronauts, along with some of the mission control people from the Apollo period of time, to be able to discuss some of the differences of then versus now, of what it takes to go to the moon.
Hmm.
We have NASA has committed also to bring the Orion capsule, which is the capsule, the mock-up of the capsule that's the one planned to go to Mars.
Oh,
So,
wow.
a lot of neat space stuff out in that area. It's also the 100th anniversary of U.S. carrier aviation, and so there's we will try to line up as many as we can of airplanes that have tail hooks on them and be able to have them here. I think you can. I think that's still apropos to say. There's going to be some focus on air racing and air racing back to the 30s and 40s era up to the current air racing, which I think there will be a lot of interest with this being the last year that the air races in Reno will be in Reno. I hope going forward they'll be somewhere else. That will be a big day. Public benefit flying, because we want to highlight to people that there's a lot of good that comes out of aviation, and the public benefit flying are some of the folks that volunteer their time, efforts, planes, resources to help, whether it be flying patients to hospitals or whether it can be animal rescue. There's just lots of different forms of that. Things that where the C-17 will come in and set up a hospital in a hurricane area. Any of that kind of public benefit activity to put an awareness on. There's a lot of good humanitarian effort that comes out of it also. The Air Force, they've committed through their one section of the Air Force called MATCHCOM, which is the training command, and they have in the training command basically one of everything or responsible for it. So we think there'll be a lot of variety from what the Air Force teaches people to get their wings in, all the way up to some of the Gen 5 fighters that are out there today protecting us around the world. And so something different every day, something fun and unique. And along with commercial aviation, we've got commitments from two major airlines that are going to be there. So it'll be rotating every day, something different every day. And and then the one I'm very excited to see is I guess it'd be the aerial mobility. There's so many terms being used around some of these.
Urban air mobility, I think might be one of the latest, although the way I keep up with it, that's probably 10 iterations old by now.
At least you're not back where I'm calling them drones. The company that Boeing has a investment in, Whisk, is going to actually show a unmanned demonstration of their current vehicle, which I have not seen, and that's going to be a lot of fun to see that operation, a full size demonstrator that eventually will carry people. So a lot going on with night air shows on Wednesday and Saturday, and our fun fly zone on the other evenings, where you can see some STOL demonstrations with some other unique 3D RC flying, and just a fun family activity in the evening if you're staying on the ground. So our goal is to wake you up excited and put you to bed really tired.
So let's talk about, the core of EAA, which of course is experimental aircraft, and that created the organization. It also is, and certainly appears to be, the healthiest and fastest growing segment of aviation today. And how is that represented, and what's evolving in that from that perspective with AirVenture and the ability to do that?
Well, one, it's gotten to be probably one of the largest number of airplanes that arrive and park in one area is our home built area. It's when we try to highlight through our forums and workshops what where EAB has gone from basic plans built airplanes to now very sophisticated, well-engineered kits that you can purchase that now have really lowered the barrier of entry as far as skill set and having to scrounge up parts and material to make them, to be able to put your own plane together. We really do a lot of educational work on what that's all about. And to your point about the fastest growing, on an annual basis, there has been over the last few years more EAB aircraft registered on the FAA registry than all of the Part 23 manufacturers together. So that's the Cessnas, the Beechcraft, the Pipers, the Carbon Cubs, and all of those. So, there's a lot of people inquisitive as to why, and some of it is because it has gotten to be such a mainstream industry. And again, to my point of really well engineered, very well designed kits, and they're creating products that from a performance and value can replace a lot of the Part 23 airplanes because they're more affordable. They have tremendous performance and useful loads, speeds, and payloads and other features to them. Modern avionics, in the experimental avionics world, a lot of the development that goes into some of the certified avionics of today are done first there. So you see a lot of glass panels, a lot of cockpit awareness or features in it. I'm sure that at some point they're gonna find. You look at the Garmin SafeLand system that's in the certified airplanes. I think at some point you'll see something like that then come down into the home built where it'll be readily available for anybody to put into an airplane.
Right.
That's basically what we highlight then is just innovation. It's all about innovation and how innovation ends up driving new product development.
Yeah. Well, that's always close to my heart. Obviously, we've got a kit going on right behind us here, but I love it. As give you my personal thing, I love it when the experimental side of it kind of gets a little bit mixed in more with some of the center of the action in the main square or in some of the other areas, just to see a few of those kits available to people in the biggest areas. It's just, as you said, it's some of the most exciting parts of everything that we do, and moving so quickly.
It really is. Last year I was right off the main square was an exhibit for it was a P-51 Mustang kit that was designed over in Europe and brought over, powered by a Rotax. And
the scale wings.
And I don't know how you take a Rotax and make it sound like a Merlin, but they did. It was unbelievable, the fit and finish and how they were able to capture, even the rivet patterns on some of these composite fairings that were part of the fuselage. And I understand there's some other models also in work. But you'll see those types of innovations in engine technologies, and it's all here to explore and learn, and hopefully the other piece of kids 18 years and younger are always welcome for free, because we want them to come in and we want that spark to get ignited the week of AirVenture that they'll take with them and get hooked on aviation for their future.
Absolutely. That makes it's so much sense, and such an exciting week for so many different reasons that you basically, I tried describing it to someone I hadn't been, but was an avid pilot, and just said, you're just, I've been going for 30 years probably, and there's no way I would say I've seen everything.
No, I'm the same way. And what actually always is the biggest bummer is it's over on Sunday, and Monday you hear from one of your best friends something that you miss that you really wish you would have saw. It's like
exactly. EAA does obviously a lot more than AirVenture, and you see that at the show. Advocacy is a big part of it. We're at a very critical moment in time that I'm not sure how many people are aware of, which is the FAA reauthorization bill. And Representative Sam Graves was here on the show talking about it. I understand you testified recently about that. Tell me a little bit about EAA's input into what will become the next phase of future through what's happening with the FAA reauthorization bill.
Yeah, the exciting part about this bill for this year is, one, going into the creation of the bill, there's not a lot of contentious issues that are sucking up our time and resources to fight off, if you will. And we've watched that for the last, 10 or more years, which was the privatization of the towers, took all the oxygen out of the room. So there's none of that going on. And what the shift is that with Sam and Representative Larson out of Washington, each party's chair on the Aviation House Subcommittee, or they're actually the Transportation Infrastructure Committee, they work really well together across the aisle, and they are committed to making sure aviation stays strong in our nation. And they this year are doing something different in adding general aviation as a specific section and call out of the FAA reauthorization bill, of which it's never been involved as being specific in the bill. like you would have with air traffic control or the commercial airline. So we have a chance here to make sure that we educate our elected officials as to what's important about general aviation. What is it that we need? We need to educate them on the economic upside of it, but also what do we need to make sure that it thrives and can grow. One of the things that we're working on very hard at EAA is a regulatory change that has like most other government programs, it's got an acronym called MOSAIC. And this is a chance for the FAA to go back and relook at increasing the light sport category, increasing the types of airplanes, the speeds, useful loads, the weights in the light sport category to be far more inclusive and go upscale a bit, if you will. Mm-hmm. It's been a big success, but it was all pretty arbitrary as to how things were set. And the FAA has come around to saying, let's look at this on a safety continuum as to what kind of products do we really want to include that have a proven track record, that are safe. Is it based on wing loading? Is it based on flight controls? Is it based on horsepower, speeds, or other characteristics? And in the work that's been done on that, it can really start increasing, or really will start increasing the types of airplanes that could be included in the LSA category, which then also could be operated on a sport pilot license, which is another big plus. And we're seeing very positive movement on it. The FAA is working it and active. Timing, they have committed that they will probably have something by the end of summer that would go out into the public registry or notice of proposed rulemaking in the public registry, which would be, an incredible upside for us in the light GA category. It will also have some positive changes and impacts in the experimental amateur built category of airplanes. So that's encouraging too, because one of the things we feel is that there are certain makes and models of in the EAB world that are proven, have great safety records, and we should make them available to be used in flight training in commercial applications, so that it will help lower the cost of flight training. I mean, you look at some of the RVs and other airplanes that are out there, they would make excellent training platforms. And really help the barrier of entry for flight training, which is something that we're really advocates of.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I mean, again, the safety record speaks for itself. The fact that we need, just as we need pilots and mechanics, we need more aircraft, and the ability to not have that forced into a limited, almost arbitrary bucket as to why you can't use it for flight training or something. That doesn't make a lot of sense.
It doesn't. The other thing that Jeff, you and I talked about, because you give me a great insight and perspective from the maintenance side of aviation, is we're right now we have a system which has designated pilot examiners called DPEs, and then we also have the A&Ps, but they also have AIs that oversee what they do.
Yep.
And there isn't enough FAA staff to be able to perform those functions, so they get delegated. And the FAA has a lot of bureaucracy in overseeing these folks that they give these designations and gives these authority to, but they can't keep the staff large enough to be able to grow the population of these DPEs. And so we've gone in and asked specifically to say, let's create a national program for oversight so that you have less need for overhead to look at them, and you can then expand the numbers of them across the country. Right now, with the flight training going as gangbusters because of the needs for pilots and the airlines, people are finishing their training to get a private pilot's license or a commercial or an instrument rating, and they have to wait sometimes months to get a check ride done because there are not adequate numbers of DPEs to be able in their area and region to get things done. We've got stories of people finishing up at a flight school in Wisconsin and having to fly to New York to find a DPA that they can get on their schedule to get the check ride done. And we need to solve that, because that's just one more barrier, one more financial hurdle, and one more excuse to say this is too hard. And we're working with in the reauthorization bill to try to solve that.
Yeah, and we talked about that with Sam Graves on the show as well. It is a lot of people don't understand, just for those of you listening tonight, how the system works. And for all of these designees, which is when you're not actually taking your check ride with someone from the FAA or not seeing an FAA, you usually don't see an FAA person for your medical exam or for any of those tests. It's a designee, and it's so hard to find them. And it's not because you don't have a lot of qualified people there, raising their hand and going, I'm qualified, I'll take that job. It's because it is technically, they have to say we have a need, and that's when they will allow someone to become one of those people, no matter how qualified they are. And they can't say they have a need if they don't feel they have the capacity, and they is the local FSDO or the local medical management, whatever it is. If they don't have the capacity if they don't believe they have the capacity to manage that person, they will not allow more people. And so that's actually where it seems that the bottleneck is in FAA management. So it sounds like the work that you're doing can have a monumental impact on changing that for medical examiners, for pilot examiners, for mechanic examiners, all over even perhaps it would maybe even reach the designees for DERs, designated engineering representatives, and all those different people that make our entire industry work. New STCs, new products, new pilots, new mechanics, and medicals, all based on whether or not we're going to get rid of that bottleneck of managing them.
That's exactly it, and that's why we want it on the list of things that need to be in reauthorization. Then the other big one that I haven't mentioned yet is that we're wanting to make sure that there's some legislation that ensures a safe transition to the replacement of lead in fuel, that the transition from current leaded fuel to unleaded fuel, that we look at that and make sure that it's done safely, so that it's not just cut off the supply of leaded fuel today and people are left with the inability to get fuel. It needs to be very, very carefully supported by the FAA and the U.S. government to make sure that we can get through this, because we're already seeing too many cases of airports that are very prematurely. They know there's a mandate in 2030 to get rid of lead, but already they're using that as an excuse to get rid of it today. And we've had actually at Reed Hillview Airport, there were 2 incidents associated with an aircraft that needed the 100 low lead for the engine to run, and it misfueled with 94 unleaded, because there is no 100 low lead currently out at the airports. No 100 unleaded out at the airports. And there was incidents as a result of it, with engines stopping in there. And so we need to make sure, as we get through to the 2030 mandate, that we have the appropriate protections in place to make sure we continue to operate as we have in the past.
Yeah, well, EA has always been at the heart of that. I mean, EA, a lot of people don't realize, of course, that EA owns the auto fuel STC and helps make that possible and available for people with the lower compression engines to burn MoGas. But of course, that doesn't cover some of the higher, more powerful engines. And with GAMI first making something getting certified, but not readily available yet at your local airport, and others on the way. There's a lot of work to be done before we can turn the spigot off and strand everybody. I agree.
The last, and it's I'll call it late breaking news, Jeff, because I hadn't talked about it while we were at Sun and Fun. But one of my big passions also is, as far as EA, is to make sure we protect the number or the ability to support vintage airplanes. And vintage as a definition just means an old airplane to where sometimes the manufacturer's not providing parts or support anymore for it, or parts are just not being built, and it's very difficult to be able to keep them going. And that's a major part of our fleet. I mean, we were joking, Jeff and I were, about the volumes of new airplanes being produced today pale in comparison to the numbers that are already out there that were built in the 70s and 80s, where they were building 10, 12,000 a year at one manufacturer. And so we've got to keep these things going, because that also is the lowest cost that you can get into aviation in an Aranca or an Aluscum, or really relatively reasonably priced older airplane. We got movement this week where they are announcing a program, and it's really a part by part program. But the example that was used through EAA was to be able to use a solenoid for a starter solenoid off of from a Napa Auto Parts store, and I believe the starter came off of a Cessna 150. I don't quite remember the specifics on that, but the FAA has a way that if you can get a part that has the same function and fit, that is non-certified but can perform the task that needs to be tasked, there's a way to, through a paperwork at the Chicago ACO, to be able to get this done. And they actually have a name for the program, and we're going to start promoting it here more widely in the next couple of weeks. And it's up to the mechanic and the airplane owner to decide, if I'm in that kind of situation, is there an alternate part that can be used that's a non-aviation part? And the FAA is encouraging us, use it, submit them. They're giving us a special individual at Chicago to submit these to, send them to, and not just submit them to. And they will work them fast and feverishly to look at whether they can be accepted or not. So again, it's another small step in being able to keep some of these airplanes going.
Jack, that's not a small step. That's huge. That's massive. I mean, if I understand you correctly, let's be clear. This, we talked, as you mentioned, we talked about it. The massive part of the fleet that's out there, 60s, 70s, that's when most of these aircraft were made. That's what runs General Aviation. And the reality is those aircraft manufacturers were pulling from what was available, those parts. It's a Ford alternator, right? I mean, that's what it is. It's the voltage regulators are off the shelf. The solenoids are off the shelf. They're all things that were done at the time. And if there's a path now to getting those parts accepted for those owners, and being at a price point that now all of a sudden is very achievable versus simply full of liability protection for the exact same part, that would be an enormous change.
The process is officially in place.
Wow. We could have titled our whole show after that one, Jack.
Yeah, I need to get our subject matter experts with you so you can get the full background information.
Yes, please do that. We'll have a show dedicated to that, because that could be a massive, and I'm not just talking about the door handles off of the Volkswagens that the Pipers use for trim. That could be really big. That's wonderful, wonderful news.
It's just another path to try to get things done that we need to get done to keep our airplanes going in a safe manner.
Well, ultimately, when you again, going back to AirVenture, you walk around and you see the center part that is what's new and what's happening with all the new products. You go a little further out, you see the experimental side. But when you really look at what fills up the North 40 and what's we're closed with attendees and how many airplanes arrive at the show, you see it's the Cessnas, the Pipers, the Beechcraft, the Grummans, and I'm sure I'm leaving out everybody else that along the way. And the idea that we're going to create new pilots at the rate we need without tapping that existing market at all of aircraft seems unlikely.
It does. It really does. And then we're the next generation of those old airplanes are right behind it. So they're gonna keep coming, and we've got to figure out how to deal with that and keep them flying.
Yeah, it is a little funny when I forget what the actual definition is. I'm sure someone will remind me of when it becomes an antique legally. There's some modern looking aircraft that we don't consider antique that all of a sudden get qualified now.
It's just it's a back date in time. I think it's 30 years. I think that's the number. We have our own definition at EAA for when we're judging airplanes, but I know in the state of Kansas, it just needs to be 30 plus years old to qualify as a quote antique. And that gets you out of having to pay property tax on it.
I'm flying an antique. I didn't
Yeah,
realize that.
that performs just the same as some of the new ones today.
Yeah. Well, there's been a lot of evolution of some of these things, and I think since I would probably say the last 10 years has been some of the most exciting it has ever been for seeing this. It's happened, I think it happened first in avionics, where after, and I came out of the avionics industry, you obviously interfaced with it a lot at Cessna. Um, the where it used to be so rigid and so unbelievably expensive to even consider a small change or a new product, finally it was the use in the experimental world of this non-certified attitude indicators and PFDs and all these other things that all of a sudden now, boom, it's all over the place for a lot less money, including autopilots. And now to see it start to transition into other segments of the market, including what you've announced tonight, is it's just wonderful to hear.
And don't forget another EA first, which was just a few years ago, using the North Sea rules. EA was able to get the non-certified avionics into Part 23 certified airplanes. So you could put Dynon equipment as example in your 172 or your Bonanza.
Absolutely. I should have given you direct credit for that because you're right. That I mean, North Sea is what made all that avionics happen. In that, that's what allowed it, and the FAA kind of watching what was happening in the experimental world, supported by EAA, and then seeing planes aren't crashing. You know, we should be using this. Planes are crashing with vacuum pumps.
Yeah,
that's what we do know.
Yeah, we're doing all of these with the intent of enhancing safety, which no one can argue that that's not a good thing.
Absolutely. It makes perfect sense. I mean, you go all the way back to how you started the story with something like, let's say, a solenoid. Would you rather have the original solenoid, which I've worked on a lot of those out there, you know, would you rather be working on an airplane with a 40-year-old solenoid that's, you know, heating up all the time, but it's a certified part? Or would you rather encourage that person to get the $12 one at Napa to replace it and not have these problems?
And it's interesting on the paperwork. I think it actually is a 337 on it. That it refers to the specific Napa. It must be bought at a Napa auto store. This particular part number of solenoid. I thought that just makes me happy and makes me smile to know you can do that.
Wow, that's very, very cool. So so what else is new and kind of hot happening at EAA as far as kind of initiatives? I know you've spent a lot of time on youth and helping create new pilots because we are facing a crisis for that. What's happening both within the organization and also connecting to AirVenture?
Well, we know the youth piece of our initiatives through our chapters, which are so important to us, our chapter network, where you got a local place of like-minded people to go hang out with at the airport. We're over 2.5 million young Eagles that have been flown, and we've continued to ask for a long time as to what's next. You take the flight and that's interesting, but you don't have anything to keep you engaged after you've taken that flight, especially if you don't have aircraft or aviation family members or friends or mentors or someone to keep you active. So we've been working really hard and now have rolled out what we call our Aero Educate program. And this is a program that's working on the engagement of a young person. So after they've taken the flight, it's online. They have access to curriculum and training, not to the level of like the AOPA high school education programs, but it's for them, the young person. It's for their parents. It's for their teachers, because we provide in there free programs that they can take back to the classroom and use for training, and they're more hands-on demonstration types of things. And then it's a badging program where kids, as they progress through the various learning modules, can be rewarded and continue to kind of help motivate and keep them going. It's all free. It's all online. We've had some great sponsors to help us get that done. It's all new, but we hope this will be the what's next, but also you have to answer the question of how do you connect with them? And you got to connect where they are, which means you have to have something they can access on their phone or their iPad or their computer with this programming. And we're very, very excited that that's going to get higher levels of engagement with these young folks. Because the wonderful thing about the Young Eagle flight is through the generosity of Sporties, they can get to learn to fly software that trains them to take the written test, but that's really not practical until you're about 15. So we've got a lot of kids younger than that it's like, I want to stay in front of them. And it's not just pilot careers and about being a pilot. We also have it around engineering. We have it around different ATC, air traffic control. So it's getting them familiar with all the various aspects of where do you want to go with your aviation interests. And of course, a lot of big companies view that as a great way to start getting people interested in careers in aviation and various aspects of it, because everybody's suffering with the shortages of having the talent that they need to keep their companies going. So it's been great to see that get rolled out. And it happened concurrently with a big addition we did to our museum. We built a learning center, and big investment, got it completed last July. It has a lot of hands-on STEM labs where kids can tear apart an engine, where they can build circuitry, where they can do sheet metal work, where they can do composite work, as part of all this educational outreach to younger kids. And then it's the capstone of it is the Pilot Proficiency Center, which is 10, I think we're up to 12 Redbird simulators in a professional flight training environment, and pre-established courseware that we have, different modules on every possible different things you'd want to continue to improve your proficiency in flying. The center is offering that. We encourage people during AirVenture to come over to the center. There's seminars every day. There's lectures every day. There's flying of the simulators. It's you get in. You can go online and sign up to get a slot in it. But again, this is going to be year-round kind of. It is a year-round training facility that's unbelievably state-of-the-art and really well thought out.
That's great. And a lot of people don't think about going to Oshkosh outside of AirVenture, but I have been there. It is very cool to go to off season, as it were, if off season is everything other than that 1 week. It is definitely cool. The other thing that you guys have done a really good job on, of course, is the Ray Scholarship Program, because one of the big challenges, of course, is being able to afford this and finding ways to help people directly. I think really makes a difference.
It's been the success stories from it are incredible. The Ray Scholar Program, the primer on what it's all about is through our chapter network. Chapters can sponsor young people to apply for a Ray Scholar, and part of the criteria is they want the young person to be involved in the chapter, already showing an interest that's something they want to pursue is learning to fly, and they have to have a mentor from that chapter. And the key to that is, if they're awarded the scholarship, there's responsibility of the mentor to make sure that they get this thing done within a year, the training. And we've awarded now, hundreds of these scholarships, and they're full $10,000 scholarships, which can pay in many areas for most of the flight training that needs to be done. And we made a proposal to the Ray Foundation, who is a phenomenal foundation that has kept aviation alive, and with many of the associations, whether it be AOPA, EAA, the Sun Fund facility that down there, their education programs. We said there's something wrong with the training process, and that is the dropout rate is about 80%. And we think if you have somebody that's kind of pre-qualified and self-selected, they want to do this and they have a passion for it, and they're involved with an organization and a group, being the chapter, who want to support them on this journey, that the success rate will be much higher. And we have now, over the number of years that we've had this, we've had it in place for about 3 years, have a 80+% success rate of these young people getting their private pilot's license within a year. And
wow.
it's you read the letters from the young people who send in, the thanks, and I'm done the thanks, and it's an incredible story, and it does what James Ray wanted to do, which was he wasn't interested in creating pilots and especially not interested in creating professional pilots. That wasn't his thing. He thought that as a young person, it changed his life when he learned to fly because it gave him some discipline he didn't have. It gave him focus. It taught him how to learn. It taught him how to process information. He said there was just so many things that then made me a better person. And I think young people are missing that. And this is what I want to give back to them. And it's paying huge dividends.
That just sets a model which makes you say, great, like if we've proven that at an 80% plus success rate for that group, then how do you expand it? How do you find the people that didn't make it but were runner-ups and are just as deserving? And if we know we're going to get 80%, like
the good news on that is it's a well-funded program, and if you missed it one year, you certainly can be a candidate the next. And the chapters have grabbed it and have seen the success of it. And what they have done is have, in some cases, created their own matching fund. So you get a chapter that says, I'm going to take the 10,000, I'm going to split it into 2 scholarships, and we internally are going to raise the money to get each of those up to a full $10,000 scholarship because they're so excited about the program. So
that's remarkable.
it's
What
fun
does
to watch.
EA do to help bring kind of all the scholarships together? It seems like that's an area that I know when I was looking even with my own boys is a little challenging for people to navigate, where if you want to go into an aviation profession, trying to see what's out there that can help me get there.
We're not, we've kind of moved from where we had kind of a dog's breakfast of scholarships available based on just monies that have come in, donors who say, I want to do something, I want to create a scholarship, to really moving towards this more focused James Ray scholarship program through our chapters. We still do have other scholarships, and I'll have to admit, I don't think anyone is really good at aggregating and saying, okay, I have an interest in you'll know which example I'm using here. I have hands-on mechanical abilities to be an AP, but I'm really bright and I'm going to be a mechanical engineer, and I need money to go to school. Where do I go that would be a scholarship that really is designated for somebody like me has a very special need? It's hard to sort a lot of that out.
Yeah, it definitely is. We've talked a lot about youth and the younger kind of generation coming up. There seems to be an opportunity also that as an industry, not EA, just as a whole industry, we seem to not do a good job at, and that is when someone has finished college, has moved on, maybe gotten promoted a couple times. I don't know what age to put on it. Maybe they've reached their late 30s or something like that, and all of a sudden we have someone who's always wanted to fly perhaps, or could be really turned on to that, has the ability, has discretionary income now. They can pay for all this, they can afford all of this, and we don't know how to reach them unless they just happen, like in my case, to just, you end up working next to someone and one pilot makes another pilot because that's what we do. But there's no program that really has knocked it out of the woods for that. What do you think?
We have two initiatives that we hope will help with this, and one is called our Eagle program, not Young Eagle, but Eagle program, and that's through the chapters also, where we give the rides and the indoctrination of what it's like to be a general aviation pilot in a flight, and to adults. And we're finding that a lot of the parents of young Eagles and a lot of again, chapter members who are recruiting other people that are grown, this is a good opportunity to get them interested. And then the chapters have been holding one-day seminars on learn to fly and what it's all about and how to go about it. What are your options for flight training, whether it be a club or an FBO, or all the various methods and about taking tests and what have you. So it's very focused around the chapter. In the coming weeks, if you look at EAA www.ea.org, we're going to have a virtual event that goes on for a few days during the week. That's called our Learn to Fly Week, and we hope that that's another educational outlet that will help demystify what it takes to learn to fly for anyone at any age, the whole process and various methods of how to get there. So it's kind of a lot of, I would call it baselining education for somebody that's interested in learning to fly. And you're right. I mean, we've recruited our friends, many of us have over time, and got them interested in all that. But there's just some of that fundamental basics of what does it take, what it's all about, how should I, that really a lot of us got from our mentors who were in aviation.
Yeah, maybe we can make it a little more. I love that. Maybe since you said it exists, we can make it a little more obvious that it's Young and Adult Eagles Day.
Yeah.
I think there's so many adults that show up at that, and their kids are getting rides, and you know that somewhere in their heads of the moms and dads watching, they're like, you know, I would do that, right? Like if someone's going to show, like I feel uncomfortable, but can I ask for a ride? Like maybe I would do this.
And again, it's trying to how to get them there. I meet people all the time who have hit that point in life where they paid their kids college off and all that, and say, I really want to learn to fly, Jack. How do I do that? And they don't have any other aviation friends, or and there's just not a lot out there to help get these people down that path.
Yeah, it's a tough challenge, but I think one well worth solving as we can, because not only, of course, does it create more pilots, more people in it, but I think the more adults that are exposed to it and at some point in finding their dreams, the more, or I guess the less fringe general aviation becomes, and the more people become aware of the airports and the importance of it, all this wonderful positive feedback cycle.
The one thing we want to do is historically one of the problems had been, especially when there was lots and lots of flight schools around, is that you got an interest in learning to fly, and usually how the scenario went down was you walked into that flight school and said, I'm gonna go check that out. And the first thing they tell you is it's going to cost you $1 million. I'm joking, but it's going to cost some ridiculous amount of money and a lot of time. And you want to sign up, and your first deposit needs to be X. And we're trying to take a tack of, first you need to understand what's involved in learning to fly, the process, and then what are the various options to get there that can help relieve the cost constraint, whether it be a flying club, whether it be through a chapter, whether it's dual ownership. There's just exploring every possible way of getting there, whether you want to start out light sport, to kind of piecemeal and work your way up the into private, into other kinds of flying, but really letting people understand all the options as opposed to scaring them off like they just walked into a car dealership.
Yeah, I think they do a better job at the car dealership, to be honest.
They close better.
They close better, and they really don't want someone leaving. They're like, oh no, we can make it work for whatever budget you have, and then you'll leave with the most expensive thing they have. But yeah, we need to do a better job making it an inviting environment and convincing people not to turn around and go back out, and in some cases letting them know the airport exists to begin with, just so that they can get there. But there's nothing better for me than bringing someone into aviation, especially if you see them dive in afterwards and head first, and next thing you know, they've bought a plane, and it just goes from there.
You're right. There's nothing better.
Well, Jack, I really appreciate so much taking time to join us here on SocialFlight Live and AirVenture 2023. I'd be thrilled if it were next weekend. I'm ready. I'm ready to go. Like we show up by Saturday. We're there going, even though the show doesn't go until Monday. So it couldn't come sooner if you asked me. But I know you need more time to set a few more things up.
Right now, our biggest impediment is we have white stuff over the green stuff. So we need some of the white stuff to melt and go away so you can land here.
Fair enough. Absolutely. I will definitely wait for that to leave. Yeah, I don't need that. But thank you so much for taking the time. It was great seeing you down at Sun and Fun. It will be great seeing you out at AirVenture. And it just every year gets better than the last one. And I'm thrilled to have you share all of that with us.
Well, thank you, Jeff. It's always fun to be on your show.
All right. You take care. Thank you. Have a good night.
Good night.
And to all of you, thank you so much for taking time out of your evening to join us here on Social Flight Live. I have missed being off this last 2 weeks, and I've missed all of you, and I really am thrilled to be back. Next weekend, Tuesday, April 11th, Meredith Bagby. She is the author of The New Guys. This book is this incredible story, the never before told story of NASA's barrier-breaking 1978 astronaut class. This is the talk of the town. It's a brand new book, and it's fascinating. I mean, just all you have to do is go on Google and type in The New Guys, and it's story after story after story, some of them just amazing, entertaining, and heartbreaking about what took place with changing the culture and having some amazing firsts in NASA's astronaut class. So Meredith Bagby will be with us. And then Tuesday, April 18th, Jason Morrison of Rebuild Rescue is here. And we just have more and more guests as we build into summer and into the flying season. So again, thank you all for joining us here on Social Flight Live. And I wish you all blue skies.